With Shea Patterson coming in, he's an electric. He's a fun guy to watch, and not a great guy to prepare for. But I think they've done a good job this year. Moving the ball around. They have a lot of very, very talented wide receivers, and I think with taking that red shirt off Shea, they give him a great shot of finishing the season.
Is he the kind of guy you prefer to kind of keep in the pocket because he can improvise so well?
Yeah, once he gets out of the pocket, that's when the longer the plays go. To me, I talk to the guys. It's like the Harlem Globetrotters. It becomes behind the back passes, and the ball gets, you kind of lose. You lose the edges of the defense, and the play can go for a long time. So we have some different thoughts on what we're going to do for the game.
How have you seen their offense change with him at quarterback?
Formationally, it seems like they're pretty wired into what they have done in the past. I think it's hard to make wholesale changes, late in the season, especially with an inexperienced player. So I think they're letting him, play to his strengths, and they're letting him throw the ball around and letting him, I guess, mature and develop into the player they think he is.
Working with Des Harris, he's been through a couple of knee injuries. What have you seen from him? It seems like he's really kind of come along this year and worked through those two separate knee injuries.
Yeah, Des has gotten stronger and stronger. I think a couple plays at LSU. They had a couple forced fumbles at the LSU game, and when he's gotten in throughout the season, I think his comfort level, how he's played, and the execution has improved all year. So I think this has been a great year for him, getting back, getting the confidence back in his body. I know, coming back from injuries is always difficult, but then having excessive injuries and just that mental part of bouncing back. So I'm proud of him, the way he's handled it to get healthy, and he's been really good all year.
How was JT Gray kind of adapt to your coaching style? How has he kind of progressed this year?
I think JT's had a very fine year. I think both JT and Dre, in terms of production, are probably the two of the most productive guys that we've had on defense. And from a consistency, Dre's been very, very consistent, and JT, I think he's doing a great job in terms of productivity. Both of them are very versatile guys. So we've been fortunate having those guys with those skill sets. They've proved to be valuable. It's allowed us to play some base and not have to sub in some packages and still feel like we have a shot.
Did you see that production coming from those two in the spring during the training camp?
Yeah, that position in this style of defense will be, should be a productive position, and they both are intelligent players, so they've adapted well, and the production doesn't surprise me.
I think 4 of the last 5 opponents have scored at least 40 and had 500 yards. Is there a theme within those games, something that kind of connects them all?
Well, it's execution and tackling. It's that's really the roots of playing defensive football, and there's no magic calls, and it's about execution. It's about we talk about we need the defense to behave the way the defense is designed to behave. Every defense that we call should have a different behavior, and we need the guys to execute within the parameters of those calls, and then ultimately if the ball goes in the air and you don't knock it down, and the ball carrier has the ball, and there's 1 or 2 or sometimes on Saturday 3 missed tackles, that becomes hard to play any quality of defense if the first, second, or third guy can't get the guy on the ground.
Are guys just thinking too much, or is there a lack of communication? You know what I mean? Like you said, there's no magic calls, but things are, or is it just physically not tackling? Is that?
Well, some of them, you watch and we're there, and somebody kind of falls off a block, and sometimes it's the post player, which as you guys know, the post player. If the post player doesn't get him down in post defense, it's going to go for a while. It's the execution of understanding if I'm a B-gap player and they run outside zone, I have to stay leveraged outside my man. And for whatever reason, we're not seeing the practice reps translate into showtime. And that's something that we have to continue to develop. And we have to keep demanding those guys because the tricky part is when you watch the film or when the guy comes off the field, he'll tell me what he did wrong. I said, but that's a little late, guys. That's a little bit late. So I need to do a better job of making sure they know exactly what to do. In the last couple of weeks, we've drastically reduced the amount of calls in an effort to keep things very concise, Monday through Friday in terms of the meetings, in terms of how I script practice, to how we go through and review practice, that it's going to be very, very concise. There's not a lot of volume right now. And, unfortunately, even with the reduction of volume, there's still some mistakes.
Are they practicing like they're playing? I know that sometimes practice carries over the game. Are you seeing kind of the same mistakes in practice as well?
No, actually practices are pretty clean. They're pretty clean, and I don't know if it's an anxiety or, it's, offenses always do things that you don't expect. The same way defensively we do things that we haven't done weeks prior. So there's always that component to, that's why they call it game planning. You don't come out and do the same thing every week. But the rules, we need to see those rules transfer into any formation, because you're playing man, there's not a lot of variances to man. And, if you're playing man and your X receiver runs an under route and you're playing man, you got to play man to man. So some of the things, there's execution, and we need to keep, possibly limiting the volume so those guys can go out and understand exactly what we need them to do.
To that end, it does, obviously rivalry games are going to be pretty emotional a lot of times for these guys. Does that help or hurt? Do you have to guard against it or for it?
Well, I'm always for guys having great enthusiasm. I think enthusiasm, especially on defense, is one of those things that's a necessity. I don't think you can play defense from a sheer, analytical point. I think there needs to be that enthusiasm, there needs to be that toughness, there needs to be that energy to go out there and want to do it. But I think that's going to be. I think both sides are going to be equally yoked on the rivalry part of it. Offense is a game of execution, so is defense. So if both sides are emotional, then it'll probably end up balancing itself out.
You talked about the receivers being so good and Evan Ingram too, the tight end. Is there a way to scheme for receivers like that, or at some point do you just have to win one-on-ones occasionally?
Well, how they use their receivers, as you guys know, their receivers are very similar in size and stature and speed. 3 weeks ago, or 2 weeks ago when we played A&M, they had, different players ran, some different style of routes, and they lined them up specifically to run those type of routes. You don't see that as much with receivers that are all kind of running the same and all kind of built the same. And so we just got to do a great job of winning. We got to play the formation. They will move their guys around, and with the tempo that they go, it's really hard to run around and play jersey matchups. When they're snapping the ball with 30 seconds left on the 40-second clock.